the most powerful creatures to ever walk the earth, were never supposed to disappear. For more than 160 million years, dinosaurs ruled this planet. They survived volcanic eruptions, violent climate shifts, entire continents tearing themselves apart. They grew into giants unlike anything the modern world has ever seen. Towering predators, armored beasts, creatures so successful that for millions of years evolution could imagine nothing greater. And during all that time, our ancestors were almost nothing. Tiny mammals no larger than rats hid beneath roots and rocks while dinosaurs dominated the surface above them. They lived in fear. They hunted at night, and for over 100 million years, they never stood a chance. If you had visited Earth back then, you would never have predicted that one day those small, trembling creatures would inherit the planet. Human beings were not the future. Dinosaurs were. But then, something appeared in the sky, a rock from deep space, traveling faster than a bullet, older than Earth itself, and within a single day, the age of dinosaurs began to die. Forests burned across entire continents. The oceans rose in monstrous waves. The atmosphere filled with fire, ash, and darkness. Nearly 75% of all species on Earth vanished. To the dinosaurs, it was the apocalypse. But for mammals hiding underground, it was the first real chance they had ever been given. Because the disaster that destroyed the rulers of Earth also opened the door for us. Every city ever built, every human civilization, every person who has ever lived, exists because the dinosaurs disappeared. But how could one asteroid change the fate of life itself? Why did the largest animals on Earth die while tiny mammals survived? And was humanity really the result of evolution, or simply the luckiest accident in the history of the planet? To understand how humans became possible, we have to return to a world ruled by monsters. 66 million years ago, Earth belonged to the dinosaurs. Not humans, not mammals, dinosaurs. They ruled every continent on the planet. In the skies, enormous reptiles with wings wider than fighter jets soared above endless forests. In the oceans, gigantic marine predators hunted through dark prehistoric seas. And on land, the ground itself trembled beneath creatures so massive that modern animals seemed tiny by comparison. Some weighed more than tanks. Others carried teeth the size of kitchen knives. For millions of years, evolution kept making them larger, stronger, deadlier. This was the peak of the dinosaur empire. The climate was warm, sea levels were high, dense jungles stretched across huge portions of the earth. Life flourished almost everywhere, and dinosaurs adapted to every environment imaginable. Some became hunters, some became armored walking fortresses. Others evolved into gigantic plant eaters that traveled in herds across ancient plains. They had survived asteroid impacts before, massive volcanic eruptions, even dramatic shifts in the climate. Again and again, they endured, which made them seem unstoppable. If intelligent life was destined to rule Earth, it looked certain that dinosaurs would eventually become the planet's permanent masters. But hidden beneath their feet, another story was unfolding. The first mammals had already appeared. They were small, fragile, almost invisible compared to the monsters surrounding them. Most were no larger than mice. They lived underground, inside burrows and hollow trees, surviving on insects, seeds, and scraps left behind by larger animals. During the day, they stayed hidden, because daylight belonged to predators. Giant carnivorous dinosaurs dominated the surface world, and for tiny mammals, one mistake meant death. So they adapted in a different way. Instead of size, they evolved intelligence. Instead of strength, they evolved speed and awareness. Many became warm-blooded, allowing them to stay active during cold nights while reptiles slowed down. They developed sharper hearing, better memory, more complex brains. Not because they were superior, but because they were desperate to survive. For over 100 million years, Mammals remained trapped in the shadows. Dinosaurs controlled the planet too completely. There was simply no room for mammals to become anything more. No giant mammal kingdoms, no advanced civilizations, no humans. If the dinosaurs had continued ruling Earth, our ancestors might have remained tiny nocturnal creatures forever. Evolution had reached a dead end. And then, far beyond the orbit of Mars, something began moving toward Earth, a piece of cosmic debris left over from the birth of the solar system, an asteroid nearly 10 kilometers wide, traveling at more than 40 times the speed of sound. At first, no living thing on Earth noticed it. The forests remained calm. Dinosaurs continued hunting. The oceans rolled peacefully beneath the sky, but the planet was already on a collision course with catastrophe. And in just a few hours, the world of the dinosaurs would begin to end. The asteroid had been traveling through space for millions of years, silent, invisible, untouched by the chaos of Earth below. Then 66 million years ago, its path crossed ours. At first, it appeared as nothing more than a distant point of light in the sky, but within seconds, it became a fireball, brighter than the sun. The object was nearly 10 kilometers wide, a mountain from space, and it was moving toward Earth at over 70,000 kilometers per hour. Nothing in the planet's history had prepared life for what was about to happen. The asteroid slammed into the shallow waters near what is now the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. The impact unleashed more energy than billions of nuclear bombs combined. For an instant, the surface of the Earth itself vaporized. Rock melted, oceans exploded into steam, and the atmosphere ignited in a wave of superheated fire. The crater left behind stretched nearly 180 kilometers across. Today, scientists call it the Chicxulub crater. But in that moment, it was the center of the apocalypse. Everything within hundreds of kilometers died instantly. Forests were flattened by shock waves stronger than any hurricane. Earthquakes rippled across the entire planet. Some were so powerful they may have triggered volcanic eruptions thousands of kilometers away. Then came the tsunamis. Walls of water, hundreds of feet tall, raced across ancient coastlines, tearing apart ecosystems that had existed for millions of years. But the worst was still coming, as debris from the impact blasted into space. Millions of tons of molten rock began falling back to Earth. The sky turned into a furnace. Across the planet, temperatures rose high enough to ignite forests almost everywhere at once. Entire continents burned. Animals that survived the blast now faced a world consumed by fire. And then, darkness arrived. Dust, ash, and sulfur filled the atmosphere, blocking sunlight from reaching the surface. Day became night, not for hours, for years. Temperatures collapsed, plants began to die, and as forests vanished, the food chain itself started collapsing with them. The giant herbivorous dinosaurs starved first, then the predators followed. One by one, the rulers of Earth disappeared. Creatures that had dominated the planet for over 160 million years were wiped out in a geological instant, but hidden underground. Something survived. Tiny mammals sheltered inside burrows and cracks beneath the Earth. Unlike dinosaurs, they needed little food. Many could eat almost anything: insects, roots, dead animals, seeds. Their small bodies required less energy. Their fur helped them survive the cold, and their underground shelters protected them from the burning world above. The very traits that once made mammals weak now became their greatest advantage. For dinosaurs, size had been power. But after the asteroid struck, size became a death sentence. And slowly, as the fires faded and the ash settled, the age of reptiles came to an end. The planet was empty, silent, broken, but for the first time in Earth's history, the world belonged to the survivors. The world the asteroid left behind was almost unrecognizable. Forests that had once covered entire continents were gone. The skies were dark with ash. The oceans were poisoned, and across the planet, ecosystems collapsed one after another. For thousands of years, Earth became a graveyard. Nearly 75% of all species had vanished. The dinosaurs were gone. The giant marine reptiles disappeared. Even many plants and microscopic organisms were wiped out. Life itself had nearly failed. But extinction creates something evolution rarely gets: opportunity. For over 160 million years, dinosaurs had dominated almost every environment on Earth. They controlled the land, the skies, the food supply, the ecosystem itself. Small mammals survived only because they stayed hidden. But now, the giants were gone, and for the first time, the planet was full of empty space, empty forests, empty rivers, empty hunting grounds. Evolution suddenly had room to experiment again. The survivors emerged cautiously from underground into a silent new world. Tiny mammals began spreading across the devastated planet. Some climbed trees, some learned to swim. Others adapted to life on open plains. Generation after generation, they evolved rapidly. Bodies became larger, brains became more complex, senses became sharper. In a world no longer ruled by giant reptiles, mammals began taking over, and one change mattered more than all the others: the rise of warm-blooded life. Unlike reptiles, mammals could generate their own body heat. That meant they could stay active during cold nights and harsh climates. After the asteroid impact, Earth's climate had become unstable. Temperatures shifted violently, seasons changed, food sources constantly disappeared. Many cold-blooded reptiles struggled to adapt, but mammals endured. Their fur insulated them from the cold. Their faster metabolisms gave them energy, and most importantly, their brains allowed them to adapt to changing environments faster than ever before. Survival was no longer about being the biggest creature on Earth. It was about being the most adaptable, and adaptability changed everything. Over millions of years, mammals diversified into thousands of forms. Some returned to the oceans and became whales. Others evolved wings and took to the skies as bats. And, deep within ancient forests, a small group of tree-dwelling mammals began developing something extraordinary. Better vision, grasping hands, larger brains. The first primates had appeared. These early primates lived in trees where survival depended on coordination, memory, and awareness. Their descendants would slowly evolve into apes, and eventually, into us. Humanity was not the planned outcome of evolution. It was the result of a chain reaction triggered by catastrophe. If the asteroid had missed Earth, dinosaurs might still dominate the planet today. Mammals may never have risen beyond small nocturnal scavengers hiding in the shadows. There would be no humans, no civilizations, no cities, no history. Everything we are depends on the day the sky fell. But the asteroid was not the only reason humans became possible. Because after mammals inherited the Earth, the planet itself began changing again, and the next catastrophe would shape the future of humanity even more directly. An age of extreme cold was coming. The Ice Ages. Millions of years after the asteroid impact, Earth was alive again. Forests had returned. Oceans flourished with new forms of life. And mammals now ruled the planet once dominated by dinosaurs. Among them were primates, small intelligent creatures that thrived in warm tropical forests. For millions of years, their world remained stable. The climate was warm, food was abundant, evolution moved slowly. Then the planet began to change. Deep beneath Earth's surface, continents were moving. Massive tectonic plates drifted across the globe, reshaping oceans and altering the atmosphere itself. India slammed into Asia, pushing the Himalayas toward the sky. New mountain ranges formed across the planet. Ocean currents shifted, and gradually, Earth started cooling. At first, the changes were small. Winters became harsher, rainfall patterns changed. Forests began shrinking in some regions, but over millions of years the cooling intensified. Huge sheets of ice spread outward from the poles. The ice ages had begun. For life on Earth, it was another catastrophe. Entire ecosystems disappeared beneath glaciers thousands of feet thick. Sea levels dropped dramatically. Deserts expanded. Forests collapsed. Animals were forced to migrate or die. Many species could not adapt fast enough. But once again, crisis became opportunity. The shrinking forests of Africa forced some primates out of the trees and onto open grasslands. It was a terrifying new environment. There was little protection. Predators roamed everywhere. Food was harder to find. The ancient survival strategies of the forest no longer worked. So evolution pushed these primates in a new direction. Some began walking upright. At first, only for short distances. But standing on two legs gave them major advantages. They could see over tall grass, carry food, travel greater distances while using less energy. Their hands became free to manipulate objects, and, slowly, those hands began changing the future of the planet. Early humans started using stones as simple tools. Sharp rocks became weapons, bones became instruments, fire became protection. For the first time in Earth's history, a species was learning to reshape its environment instead of simply adapting to it. And the ice ages kept pushing them harder. Glaciers advanced and retreated over and over again. Each cycle brought new challenges: extreme cold, starvation, migration, competition. Only the most adaptable humans survived. Larger brains evolved. Communication improved. Social cooperation became essential. Human intelligence was being forged by catastrophe. The same brutal climate cycles that wiped out countless species were also transforming a vulnerable primate into something entirely new, a creature capable of surviving almost anywhere on Earth. By around 300,000 years ago, modern humans appeared, and they inherited a planet shaped by disaster after disaster. The asteroid that ended the dinosaurs, the shifting continents, the ice ages. Each catastrophe eliminated some forms of life while creating opportunities for others. And that pattern would continue even after humans arrived, because nature was not finished testing us. Not even close. Humanity had survived extinction, ice, famine, and predators. But one final disaster still waited in our future. A catastrophe that would nearly erase our species forever. Around 74,000 years ago, humanity came terrifyingly close to extinction. Not because of war, not because of disease, but because the Earth itself exploded. On the island of Sumatra in modern-day Indonesia, a massive volcano called Lake Toba erupted with a force almost impossible to imagine. It was the largest volcanic eruption of the last 2 million years. The blast was so enormous that it tore apart an entire mountain and left behind a crater over 100 kilometers wide. Today, that crater is filled with water, but 74,000 years ago, it became the center of a global catastrophe. The eruption launched thousands of cubic kilometers of ash and gas high into the atmosphere. Shock waves raced across the planet. Entire regions were buried beneath volcanic debris, and within days, sunlight itself began disappearing. A volcanic winter had begun. Temperatures around the world dropped dramatically. Crops failed, forests died, rain patterns collapsed. For early humans already struggling to survive the harsh ice age, this may have been the greatest disaster our species had ever faced. At the time, humans were still few in number. Small groups scattered across Africa and parts of Asia hunted animals, gathered plants, and struggled against predators and starvation every single day. Then suddenly, the climate turned against them. Scientists believe the eruption may have reduced the global human population to just a few thousand individuals, possibly even fewer. A genetic bottleneck may have occurred, a moment when almost every human alive today descended from an incredibly small surviving population. Humanity stood on the edge of annihilation. One more environmental collapse, one more failed generation, and our species might have vanished forever. But once again, survival favored adaptability. The humans who endured were not necessarily the strongest. They were the most cooperative, the most intelligent, the most resourceful. They shared food, protected one another, learned from experience, adapted to rapidly changing environments, and, slowly, they recovered. Small bands of survivors spread outward across the planet, into Europe, Asia, Australia, eventually the Americas. They crossed deserts, frozen tundras, dense forests, open oceans. No other species in Earth's history had ever adapted so quickly to so many different environments. Human beings became something evolution had never seen before, a species capable of reshaping the entire planet. But our existence still rested on an unbelievable chain of catastrophes. The collision that formed the moon, the asteroid that destroyed the dinosaurs, the ice ages that shaped intelligence, the volcanic eruption that nearly erased humanity itself. Each disaster removed old worlds and made new ones possible. And that may be the strangest truth about our existence. Human civilization was not built despite catastrophe. It was built because of it. Every human alive today is the descendant of survivors, of creatures that endured impossible odds for billions of years on a violent and unstable planet. Which means our story was never guaranteed. At every stage of Earth's history, extinction was always closer than survival. And yet somehow, life continued, against all odds, until eventually it became us. For most of Earth's history, humans did not exist. If you compressed the entire 4.5 billion year history of our planet into a single 24-hour day, modern humans would appear only in the final few seconds before midnight. Everything we are, every city, every empire, every invention, every dream, is only a brief moment in an ancient story shaped by catastrophe. A single asteroid changed the future of life. A shifting climate transformed primates into humans. Volcanoes nearly erased our species before civilization could even begin. Again and again, disaster rewrote evolution, and each time, survival depended on one thing: adaptation. The dinosaurs could not adapt fast enough. Countless species vanished forever, but small mammals endured, early humans endured, and eventually, we inherited the Earth. Yet the same forces that shaped our existence have never disappeared. The ground beneath us still moves. Supervolcanoes still sleep beneath the surface of the planet. Asteroids still cross Earth's orbit. Climate still changes. The universe that created humanity is the same universe that can erase it. And perhaps that is the greatest lesson hidden in Earth's history. Life is fragile. Civilizations feel permanent. Humanity feels important. But for billions of years, entire worlds have vanished in geological instants. The difference between survival and extinction has often come down to pure chance. A slightly larger asteroid, a longer ice age, a different volcanic eruption, and none of us would be here. But against impossible odds, life survived anyway, from microscopic bacteria in ancient oceans, to mammals hiding beneath the feet of dinosaurs, to humans staring into space, wondering how they got here. Every step of our existence was shaped by destruction. Catastrophe did not stop evolution. It drove it. And maybe that is why Earth became something so rare in the known universe. A dead planet cannot evolve. Only a changing world can create life powerful enough to survive change itself. We are the descendants of survivors from the most violent story ever told. A story written by fire, ice, darkness, impact, extinction, and time. And somewhere out there in the endless universe, other worlds may still be waiting for their own catastrophes to begin. Because sometimes, the end of one world is only the beginning of another. Tonight, Earth feels permanent. Cities glow across continents. Satellites circle silently overhead, and billions of humans live their lives believing the world around them is stable. But stability is an illusion. Beneath our feet, tectonic plates are still moving. Deep below the oceans, enormous faults silently build pressure, capable of unleashing tsunamis powerful enough to erase entire coastlines. Far above us, thousands of asteroids continue crossing Earth's orbit, and hidden beneath places like Yellowstone caldera and Lake Toba, supervolcanoes still sleep. The same forces that shaped our existence are still alive. For billions of years, Earth has never stopped changing. Continents formed and shattered. Oceans appeared and vanished. Entire species rose to dominance and disappeared forever. The dinosaurs once seemed unstoppable. Now they survive only as fossils buried beneath stone. One day, humanity may face its own catastrophe. Perhaps another asteroid, a runaway climate disaster, a supervolcanic eruption, or something no species has ever encountered before. And if that day comes, the future of life may depend on the same thing that saved our ancestors countless times before: the ability to adapt. Because survival has never belonged to the strongest creatures on Earth. It belongs to the ones capable of changing when the world changes around them. That is the hidden pattern behind every extinction in Earth's history. Disaster destroys old worlds. Then, evolution builds new ones from the survivors. The asteroid that killed the dinosaurs gave mammals a chance. The ice ages transformed intelligent primates into humans. Every catastrophe closed one chapter of life and opened another, which means humanity is not separate from nature's story. We are part of it, a temporary chapter in a planet billions of years old. And someday, millions of years in the future, another species may look back at the ruins of human civilization, the same way we study the fossils of dinosaurs today, wondering what happened, wondering how a dominant species disappeared, wondering whether catastrophe created them too. Because in the end, Earth does not belong to any one species forever. It never has. The history of life is not the story of permanent rulers. It is the story of survival through chaos. And perhaps the strangest truth of all is that every living thing alive today exists because somewhere in the distant past, something else did not survive. Humanity was born from extinction, from asteroid impacts, from collapsing ecosystems, from global winters and violent climate shifts. We are the children of catastrophe. And our entire existence is proof that even after the darkest moments in Earth's history, life finds a way to begin again.